hey, close the door so you can see it all in one big motion here.
This looks so cool. Oh my god.
You want to say anything to Laura, who painted it for you?
Thank you. This looks amazing.
Coral and Turtles mural, how to not freak out by the complexity. The Coral and Turtles mural took 5 days to paint from start to finish. The mural itself, that is. It's a roughly 8-foot by 11-foot wall, so I initially estimated it to take 5 to 7 days, because sometimes you work faster, sometimes slower, and the details are always the ones that take the longest. Generally, 2/3 of the wall are covered within 1/3 of the time, and the remainder third takes 2/3 of the time or more. Generally, when I paint a mural or a canvas painting too, I work from top down or from the back to front. One reason is if I drip some paint, and I always do, it will get painted over later during the foreground phase. The other reason is it's generally good practice to put the background in first, especially if you're going for a smooth gradient like in this mural, as you do that with a large brush or a roller in a horizontal stroke motion, and then the midground and the foreground elements sit on top of that, and that will give the landscape a feeling of depth and atmosphere that is difficult to replicate if you're trying to work around a foreground object. There are times when I will add some background details like the sunbeams in this one and in the rainforest mural that I did just before this one. The only risk with working on a background after the elements in front is messing those up, but that can always be easily fixed. It's only paint, if you can match the colors. But to answer Queldar's question, how do you start on a piece like this and not freak out by the complexity? Well, you break it up in little bits. When someone commissions me for a mural, the mural painting is actually the very last step, and it goes smoothly because of all the other steps that came before it. First, I gather reference photos and then I create a sketch to figure out the composition. I know most people do little thumbnail sketches to help them figure out how the elements will be positioned, but I generally skip that part and just get it right the first time. Sometimes I will do a pencil sketch or a digital sketch, but this time, since it was a pretty small mural, I did a whole preliminary acrylic painting. This is very important. It's like mapping all the elements and seeing how they will all look in the end. It is a time-consuming step, yes, but in the big scheme of things, it makes the mural painting flow so much smoother. I guess that could apply for a painting on canvas too. You start with a sketch on paper and then transfer the sketch on the canvas, either by tracing or gridding, but most often for landscapes, just eyeballing works fine because they're not as precise as a portrait or human bodies or a specific photo that needs to be reproduced. After you have your design drawn on the canvas, you work from the back forward, and the details are pretty much just coloring the gaps, kind of like paint by numbers. I generally block in a solid base color for the objects, usually the dark shadow color, and then add the true color, then the highlights, then any other details like little pits or spikes or bumps or hairs, and they each have a different value depending on the value of the part on which they rest on. So for example, a pit in the highlight will be lighter than a pit that is in the shadow. I would agree that a piece like this can be intimidating when seen all at once, but when you break it down in parts and stages, it's quite manageable. Sometimes I will make a little schedule or a plan. For this one, I said that I will do the background on day 1, the midground on day 2, then the foreground coral on day 4, then turtles and bubbles on day 5. That was my plan, but then as I started on the midground on day 2, I just went ahead and blocked in some of the foreground too while I was there, and I didn't finish the midground that day. It's okay to break from the initial plan, no problem. I do it often, but there has to be a plan there to be broken. We humans are fragile things. We crave a matrix, a reassurance, control, stability, rules, lest we are unstable, insecure, and out of control. Another piece of advice: only focus on one thing at a time. And another piece of advice: listen to something fun while you work. It can take your mind away from your incessant chattering mind and entertain you while you do the work. This time I revisited some of Terry Pratchett's books, my absolute favorite fiction writer. He's the creator of the Discworld, the comic fantasy book series set on the Discworld, a flat planet, balanced on the backs of 4 elephants, which in turn stand on the back of the giant turtle Atuin. This parallel time and place might sound and smell very much like our own, but it looks very different. It plays by different rules. In it you find humans like you and me, and dwarfs, trolls, golems, fairies, wizards, and witches, and death. But then some things are the same everywhere. They made some movie interpretations from some of the books, such as Going Postal, The Color of Magic, and Hogfather. I know it might not be very mainstream or up everyone's alley, and maybe that's why I love it so much. And also because of Terry Pratchett's genius, of course. This past week I listened to Witches Abroad, a story about witches, self-control, and the true power of the mind. Small Gods, a story about religion, the Inquisition, and beliefs. It was truly an insight into human psychology, much like all of Terry Pratchett's books. And I started listening to Men at Arms, a story about crime and people coming together for the common good despite their racial and stereotypical differences. Pure gold. Well, I sure do hope that you learned something from this video, or at least were entertained, and that you will challenge yourself to try a more complex art piece next. It's just a process of steps, and I know that you can do it. And remember, it's still magic, even if you know how it's done.